Breaking news out of Orem, Utah.
An unprecedented act of political violence.
Conservative activist has been shot.
Everyone is asking who's to blame. In the hours and days since the shot rang out at Utah Valley University, a political civil war erupted, with each side pointing a bloody finger at the other. The talking points were practically written before the facts were known. The battle lines were drawn before the shooter was even identified. But what if they're asking the wrong question? This rush to find a convenient political enemy, a simple scapegoat to pin this all on, isn't just a distraction. It's a dangerous lie. Because the real story, the one the pundits and politicians on both sides don't want to talk about, is far more complex and, frankly, far more terrifying. The real question isn't who, it's why. Why did this happen? The answer is buried in the shooter's past, in a digital world of coded messages, and a mind fractured by pressures that just don't fit neatly into a cable news segment. Today, we're going to follow the evidence, from the moment of the attack to the dark corners of the internet where this plot may have been born. We're going to look at the two dominant narratives, the accusations from the right and the counterclaims from the left. And then we're going to uncover the truth that neither side seems ready to face. This is the story of an assassination that America is desperately trying to misunderstand. September 10th, 2025. The setting was Utah Valley University in Orem, a campus set against the Wasatch Mountains, typically known more for its growing student body than for being the center of a national tragedy. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, was on campus for a speaking event. It was the kind of thing Kirk had done hundreds of times before, a mix of conservative speech, student Q&A, and the protests and controversy that always seemed to follow. At about 12:23 p.m. Mountain Time, the event was underway. Kirk wasn't on some grand stage. He was speaking under a tent set up near the university's Losi Center, addressing the crowd. In the middle of his speech, a single, sharp crack echoed across the campus. It was the sound of a high-velocity rifle. For a second, nobody knew what was happening. A firework? A car backfiring? Then chaos. Charlie Kirk collapsed. A single shot, fired with chilling precision, had hit its mark. The bullet came from a distance, not from inside the crowd. Investigators would later find the shooter's perch, the roof of the same Losi Center the event tent was pitched next to. It was a calculated, planned attack, designed for maximum impact and a clean getaway. Panic ripped through the crowd as people scattered for cover. Security and first responders rushed the stage, but it was too late. In the immediate aftermath, good information was hard to come by. But one thing was clear: this wasn't random violence. This was a political assassination. And in 21st century America, that's not just a crime. It's a declaration of war. Before the sun even set, the story of the day was already being written, not by investigators, but by political forces looking to use the tragedy. In Washington, D.C., the House of Representatives held a moment of silence for Kirk. It didn't last long. The chamber almost immediately fell into partisan shouting matches. The grief was real, but it was instantly swallowed by rage. It was a grim preview of what was to come. The country didn't pause to mourn. It split right down the middle into two warring camps, each armed with its own version of the truth. Experts on political violence warned that this rush to assign blame without facts was like pouring gasoline on a fire, but it seemed like no one was listening. The assassination of Charlie Kirk was no longer just about the man himself. It had become a symbol, a weapon, a ghost to be wielded in America's endless culture war. The battle for who was truly responsible had just begun. In the chaos after Kirk's assassination, the facts didn't matter. The story was written in real time by politicians, not investigators. The right wasted no time. This is the left's fault. Trump declared radicals had loaded the gun long before the trigger was pulled. Conservative media echoed it nonstop, painting the shooter as a product of liberal hate. But the left fired back. They pointed at Kirk himself, saying his culture war rhetoric had poisoned the atmosphere and helped create the very rage that ended his life. Within hours, America wasn't mourning, it was fighting. Hashtag soundbites and finger-pointing turned a tragedy into a weapon. And in all the noise, the truth was buried. For days, the country was caught in this cycle of political blame. The debate raged, a furious argument based on almost no actual information about who pulled the trigger. The shooter was a ghost, a political tool, a blank slate for each side to project its worst fears onto. But while the pundits were shouting, investigators were working. And they found him. The break in the case didn't come from a dramatic manhunt, but from a quiet surrender. The day after the shooting, a 22-year-old named Tyler Robinson walked into the local sheriff's office and turned himself in. And as the details of his life began to emerge, it became clear he wasn't the cartoon villain either side had imagined. He was something far more confusing. The official story and the political spin both ignore the shooter's own words. Just before his surrender, Robinson allegedly posted a final, cryptic message on the chat platform Discord. "It was me at UVU yesterday," he wrote. "I'm sorry for all of this. I'm sorry for all of this." Not a defiant manifesto. Not a political declaration. An apology. This was the first clue that the simple narratives were dead wrong. The profile of Tyler Robinson that investigators built was a portrait of paradoxes. Early reports painted him as a story of incredible promise. A former honor student, a near-perfect ACT score, a full scholarship to a prestigious university. But he never finished the semester. Something went terribly wrong. Governor Spencer Cox of Utah described Robinson as someone known to be politically engaged, but also deeply frustrated. According to those who knew him, that frustration wasn't just for one side. Acquaintances said Robinson was critical of both major political parties. He wasn't a simple left-wing radical or a right-wing extremist. He seemed to despise the entire system. This is the uncomfortable truth that dismantles the blame game. Robinson didn't fit in a box. He wasn't a foot soldier for any party. He was an ideologically homeless radical, alienated from the mainstream, but fluent in the language of its conflicts. The physical evidence told an even stranger story. The weapon was a .30-06 bolt-action rifle, a powerful tool for a long-range attack. But it was the ammunition that gave the most chilling insight. The bullet casings he brought with him were inscribed with messages. These weren't political slogans. They were a bizarre collage of modern internet culture. References to online memes, coded messages, and terms from a strange vocabulary of both political and gaming subcultures. This wasn't the work of a traditional political assassin. This was someone whose ideology was forged in the chaotic, ironic, and often nihilistic furnace of the deep web. His motives were wrapped in layers of memes and inside jokes that would be gibberish to the pundits trying to explain his actions. He was speaking a language the mainstream world didn't understand. Adding another layer of complexity were the deeply personal struggles that authorities were looking into. Investigators began exploring reports that Robinson may have been grappling with his gender identity and that he identified as aromantic, meaning he didn't experience romantic attraction. These aren't political positions. They're deeply personal aspect of identity. Authorities were trying to determine if these elements contributed to a sense of alienation or isolation that made him vulnerable to radicalization. This is the shooter in the shadows. Not the simple monster of the political imagination, but a real, complex, and deeply troubled person. An honor student. A political critic who despised both sides. A digital native whose motives were scrawled on bullet casings in the language of memes. A young person grappling with their own identity. Tyler Robinson wasn't the avatar of the radical left or a product of right-wing hate. He was a ghost from a different machine entirely. And to understand who is truly to blame, we first have to understand him. Then came the twist. The shooter wasn't a radical leftist or a MAGA extremist. He was something far more disturbing. Tyler Robinson didn't fit in a box. He wasn't fighting for Democrats or Republicans. He despised both. His world was forged online, in meme culture and digital subgroups no politician understands. His rifle casings carried bizarre engravings, inside jokes, coded references, fragment of language born from the dark web. This wasn't about party lines. It was about alienation, identity struggles, and a young man who turned to the internet for meaning and found madness instead. So who's to blame? Not just one side. The truth is uglier. A political system that profits from outrage. An online culture that radicalizes in the shadows. And finally, the choice of one man who climbed onto a roof and pulled the trigger. That's the part no one wants to face. There's no single villain, no easy answer. Just a tangled web where everyone shares a piece of the blame. And if we don't confront that complexity, we guarantee this won't be the last time. So, who's to blame for the assassination of Charlie Kirk? The truth is, there isn't one villain. It wasn't just the left. It wasn't just the right. It was something darker. A system that profits from outrage. An internet that radicalizes in the shadows. And a young man who chose to pull the trigger. That's the part no one wants to face. Because if there's no single enemy, then maybe the problem is all of us. So I'll leave you with this. Do you think political rhetoric pushed Tyler Robinson over the edge, or was this tragedy born from something much deeper? Backhand index pointing down, drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you believe. And if you want more chilling deep dives into America's hidden truths, hit subscribe now, because the next story might change the way you see everything.